Hello, my friends. Hello, my life warriors, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Day In, Day Out podcast. Today, on episode 318,
Oh, wow.
I have, yes, Pat Shanahan on the podcast. He is a procrastination expert, as well as a CEO, consultant, and a man of many talents. Mr. Ripley might be his name. Talented. So, how are
Very
you
good.
today,
Thanks for
sir?
asking. Very excited about the program today.
I'm excited to have you here. Yes, well, let's just say technical issues aside, we are back. We are here right now. But yeah, I have to ask before we get into the whole realm of procrastination, you have had quite a long career. Before this, you were a teacher,
Yep. A
if I
long
got
time
that
ago, I
right.
was a teacher in Philadelphia and became a principal of a school there, a junior high. We used to call those in the back in the day. And then I've been a consultant for about 30 years, 31 years.
Mm. So, why did you make the change from being a teacher to a
Well,
consultant?
I made a change from being a principal to a consultant because I love teaching. And
Hmm.
I was dealing with adults. If we're being honest here, I found it much more frustrating because it was hard to deal with adults with the behaviors that I would not allow in my students. And I just said, I'm not going to spend my career. I did it for about 4 years. And I just said, every day I was looking forward to teaching every day. When I was a principal, I would get in the
Hmm.
morning and I had to pull myself out of bed because there was just a lot of complaining, a lot of immaturity, a lot of people who didn't like to teach with other people. I mean, it was just, it wasn't my cup of tea. And I realized that there was other opportunities for someone like me, and I went and I joined a consulting group for about 5 years, and then I went on my own.
Right. Like, did you like with? Was it one of those things where the grass was like a little bit greener when you like were a teacher? Then you saw the principal role as
Yeah,
something to
I
go
think
to.
so. That's a good point because sometimes we get into careerism. You know, I should be doing something better, and I listened to my peers, and they became principals. So I said, well, maybe I become a principal. And, you know, I'm a hard worker, so I
Mm,
wasn't afraid of the work, but doing a lot of little daily things that you do as a principal. I mean, people don't, it's a tough job to do well, and if you want to do it well, you got to be there. I think 10, 12 hours a day, sometimes 6 days a week to do it well. 1,500 kids in the
mm,
school, and most of them were below poverty level, so they had very challenged lives. So you have to make sure that you're helpful, you're supportive, you're anticipating things, and you're working hard. And I was blessed; I had a really good administrative team. But I just figured I hit about 36, 37. I said, I don't think I'm going to do this for 20 more years. So, and didn't want to be a superintendent of schools because I don't have any political skills. So, consulting. Some people asked me, hey, they thought that I was pretty good at what I did, and they said, "Why don't you come on board?" And that's what I did.
mm. What type of consultancy did you join? Because when you say consultancy, that
Yeah,
is quite a broad
mostly a consulting
spectrum.
group that worked a lot in higher education. That's basically the space that I play in. I've worked with
Hmm.
Apple and GE and Google and Shell Oil and things like that. Usually at senior levels, helping senior levels be more effective
Yeah.
as a team. And so
Mm,
this was a consulting group that was made up of a lot of university professors, some of them very famous, and their expertise was to help senior leader teams work together really well.
I see. I see. And doing that for 4 years, what was the sort of catalyst for you to sort of break out and go at it
Well,
by yourself?
what happened was I was getting a lot of difficult assignments. You know, if you're in a consulting group, there's a pecking order, right? As there are in most
Hmm.
organizations. And it got to a point because I was a new kid on the block, but I was very good at what I did. And so I reached parity very quickly. And I just saw the way the assignments were distributed were kind of unfair. So if there was 5 jobs and there were 2 difficult ones, they gave the 2 difficult ones to me, and the easier ones they gave to other people. And I raised the issue. I said, "This doesn't feel fair to me." And they said, "Oh, you got to." Da, 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 da. After 4 years of trying to say, "Let's see if we can spread the butter a little bit better," I said, I just don't need this. So I went on my own.
Ah. So you went out on your own. Like, what was the sort of first gig you started doing by yourself?
It was a client in Philadelphia, St. Joseph's University, which is a Jesuit institution, and that was my first big kind of planning for myself. We started in late '80s, '89. I did Cornell University strategic plan, and but that was with the
Oh,
consulting group, you
well,
know.
now,
Then so that got me in the door and got me some experience. But the first kind of gig was St. Joe's University about 25 years ago. It's a great institution.
outstanding, outstanding. No, I've been to the
Yeah.
Cornell campus. I got to say, like, it's one of those things where if you explained like university campuses, college campuses to people out who've never been to one
Right.
outside of America, they don't actually understand
Oh,
how
that's
huge
like being on.
they are.
Yeah, it's a beautiful campus too. It's like being on a movie set, and it's in the
Yeah,
middle of nowhere. I
I,
mean, it's hard to get to Ithaca. I mean, you drive and you drive and you drive. I don't know if you flew in or helicoptered in, but I used to drive up there, and it's pretty area. But all of a sudden, you got this major university that you don't expect, and it is
yeah.
stunning looking. It's a stunning looking. That and Stanford University are the two. I think my favorite universities. Far when you walk in, you go, boy, oh boy, this is just stunning.
Oh yeah, because like I worked in summer camps back in the 90s, like, and they had like it was for an organization
Oh
called
yeah,
the
I've heard of
Fresh
it.
Air
Yeah.
Fund. Yeah. So basically the farm on the like on this large I would like compound is not right. This large sort of park where it had like contained the five camps, it was always run by
Oh,
Cornell University. So I went back with Dennis, my friend back then, to Cornell, and it was just like yeah, I got into the middle of the campus where you could see the
right, right.
football stadium, and basically there was some old historic building behind me. No, like don't ask me the name of it. It goes yeah, you go like yeah 2 miles in any direction, you're
Yeah,
still
you're
on
still on
campus. I
campus.
was like,
How about that? Yeah, the Fresh
oh,
Air Fund's still around. I mean, I've heard about it, and
yeah,
we used to take kids to Pottstown, Pennsylvania, which is about an hour from here, for a summer week. And these were mostly urban kids who are pretty tough. You know, I mean, you put them out in nature, and that's a whole different ballgame. I mean, they learned to be a team. They learned to cook together, figure things out together, and all that kind of stuff. It was actually it was a lot of fun. But they were a little afraid of something that was very different. You know, it was about an hour outside the city, and it's a different
oh yeah.
world.
Oh, indeed. Like, put it this way, it took me a bit of
Yeah.
time to adjust to my sort of like my environment there.
Oh,
But yeah, it
good.
was a good
Yeah.
time, fun times. Yeah. Now, this is the thing. Like, with what you've been doing, with like basically being a teacher, a principal, a consultant, and basically like yeah, owning your own business and like seeing how things are run on the day to day. Like, when did you sort of become aware of like the real issues
That's a
of
great question.
procrastination?
I was uh, I was writing my dissertation, all the coursework,
Hmm.
and I wasn't writing my dissertation. I was reading my dissertation, which is a very sophisticated way of procrastinating because you can keep on reading and reading and reading. And my chair said, "Pat, you got to start writing some chapters here." And I said, well, "I'm going to get around to that." And then I had to get a 1 year extension. And he sat me down and said, "If I don't see a couple chapters from you, you're out of this program." So my back was up against the wall, all self inflicted. And one of the few smartest things I've ever done is I asked three of my colleagues who had finished their dissertation, "How the heck did you do it?" And they all had these little strategies that I never even thought about. And I adopted three of them that have been kind of through my professional career, three that I've just it's helped make me very successful. I've written 12 books. So I learned how to write a book or write a dissertation, not just to read it. So, and those three strategies are very powerful. Can I share those with you? Would that be okay?
Yeah, certainly. I would love to hear it. It
Well,
might help me
it,
in the
it could
future.
help some of
Who
your listeners
knows?
too, probably because about 25% of the population are chronic procrastinators, and that could be in England, that can be in China, that can be Japan, that can be United States. I mean, it's one of these cultural things that's worldwide. So that's tens and
Mm,
millions of people. So these three strategies helped me, and I still use them today. The first thing was to make your progress visible, and the way you do that is I always have a checklist every day of things I want to do, and I always
yeah,
try to limit to 5 or 6 things. Now I used to have 10 things, and I'll talk about that maybe a little bit later. And then when I finish one, you can see if I finish that one there, I take a big black marker and I cross that out, and that's
yeah,
on my desk in front of me. And every time I knock off an item, I stand up and I cross it out. And it just see it's very visual. It's yellow. I can see it from a mile away, and I can see the list getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So making your progress visible somehow is really helpful. The second thing is about chewable chunks. A lot of times we get caught in this notion we got to sit down and rate or write or paint or whatever it is, clean up the garage for hours at a time. And what it helps with procrastinators is if they can work for 10 or 15 minutes, that gets the ball rolling. And so chewable chunks in anything you do, whether it be cleaning out your garage or painting your house or writing a dissertation, chewable chunks, 10 and 15-minute periods of time, can chop any big task into a little task. And then the last one, and I'll be done, and this is something I resisted, rewards work. And each one of the three colleagues had little, they called them reward maps. Oh, yeah, I have this, I do this, I do this. And one guy was a big golfer, and he said, for every chapter I finish, I take a long golfing weekend at my favorite golf course. I mean, he had that reward built in. And I said, well, shouldn't I be more mature than that? And they said, no, it works. And the research is very strong now that says that rewards work. So I make sure that when I do an onerous task, that I have some rewards set up. So when I do a chillable chunk and I get something done, I got a reward waiting for me. And I know what those rewards are. And I try to make a nice variety of rewards. So it's just not the same thing. Does that make sense at all?
yeah. No, it does. Like basically, with regards to the like putting things down on the list, making it visual, it gives you something to aim for. It gives you a target. Like during the day, like I work with in sales, so it's like yeah, you have a sales target
Oh,
and you've got to hit
okay.
that sales target, and you know each time you put in a sale, it chips away, chips away, chips away. So like I understand that. I get that totally. And many people, how can I put it? They when they sort of like go, I'm going to achieve this or I'm going to go for that. They don't actually use any sort. They don't
Yep.
think of a visual target. It's just like I'm going to do the action rather than sort of like going, okay, I'm listing out a plan for my day and just like have at it. And if you're running around in a new like a new area or new terrain without some
Yep.
type of map or guidance,
Yep. Yeah,
you
you'll
never
be
know where
busy.
you're going to
You'll be
end
really
up.
busy, and we reward busyness. And at least in
Oh
my
yeah.
country, we reward busy. Oh, there's Pat. He's really busy, but no one's saying, "Well, what does Pat actually accomplish?" Because he's running all over the place. And so that's exactly right. Having a
Mm,
game plan is really important. I'll tell you a quick story
yeah.
about the sales. So I got
I love
a
to hear it.
client that has known me for about 20 years, and he was asked. A buddy of his
Uh-huh.
says, "We're having a hard time with the sales in an internet company. You think you could help?" I said, well, I've
Okay.
never done sales, but let me have a conversation with people. And what I learned is that they taught these salespeople, which is a tough job. You know that. I mean, it's a tough job that you take the toughest calls first thing in the morning and kind of get them over with. And that comes from Mark Twain many, many years ago that says, if you got two frogs, eat the big one first. Well, procrastinators will
Yeah.
never do that. They just won't do that. So I said, can I make a suggestion? Why don't you take 5 of these people here, and because you had about 40 people in the company, and why don't you figure out the first three phone calls are easy ones that they kind of know this guy, this gal, she's going to buy something from me. Why don't you try that? And then the fourth one be a difficult one. And he said, that doesn't make sense, but you come out a good reputation. Let me try it. Well, it was a home run because
Mm,
I'm sitting there dreading that tough phone call. But I would take the three smaller ones or the three easier ones. All of a sudden, I got success. I got momentum. I can't wait to make the hard call. Does that make sense?
yeah. No, but like this is the thing. There are times in life where we naturally sort of fall into a
Yep.
hot streak where
Right.
everything seems to go right. You throw up a piece of toast, it'll land butter side
That,
up. You other side going,
that's
everything goes right. But like, yeah, it's one of those things where, in many respects, you need to sometimes build momentum to make sure it can go that way. And I think that's like, if you don't do that, and with regards to saying, yeah, do the hard thing first, if you put the brakes on before you can build any momentum, it's that
that's
just that much
exactly
harder.
right. So what problem with procrastinators? They say, and I'm a procrastinator. I've learned how to manage it. They have to say, oh, I have to feel like doing it. Well, you may never feel like. I mean,
Mm,
my income taxes. I hate my income taxes, as most people do. That's the biggest owner's task I have in my life, and I hate doing it. I'm never going to feel motivated to do it. But what we've learned is action creates momentum. Momentum creates motivation. So if I take 10 minutes to do my income tax and go, that wasn't that bad, I might continue the momentum. So that's don't wait around to feel inspired or feel like doing it, especially if it's an onerous task. Chewable chunk, build in a reward, make it a social activity. I mean, sometimes you do it with a friend. If you don't like to exercise, you go with your buddy and you take a walk for an hour. I mean, or run for 15 minutes. So it just, because starting for procrastinators is the hardest part. And the cycle, I'm going to explain the cycle. What happens is there's usually a task that you don't like. We don't tend to procrastinate about birthday parties and going out with our buddies to have a drink or, going walking in nature. It's usually things we don't want to do. And what happens is that our
mm,
emotions are very intense. I feel overwhelmed. I feel anxious. I can't do it. I'm not smart enough. It's too big. And these emotions are so strong. The minute you step away from the task, ooh, I feel relief. I feel relief. And that's the hook. Now, intellectually, I say, oh, you still got to do your income tax, Pat. But right now, I have no stress, no anxiety. Oh, I feel good. And that keeps the vicious cycle going. So you step away, no emotions that are negative, and then you still know you have to do it. So it's a pernicious habit. It really is.
oh no, yes, know that. Been there, got a T-shirt. V8, like, hey, I've got a videotape, DVD, and laser disc with all of these like things as well. So like I understand that totally. What I like often see as well is like when people want to like sort of put things off, they make the task
Yep. Yep.
so big that yeah, you say do it like how do you eat an
Yep.
elephant? The
Exactly
old
right. I
saying.
mean, one little piece at a time. And
One
you don't have to sit down and try to
yeah.
slug through it. If you do 15 minutes, you walk away, you do something nice, you come back, you see if you want to do it. If a task gets started, the research tells us about 50% of the time, not always, people will continue because it doesn't feel as painful. Our brains are so, oh my God, this is going to kill me. And but once we do it, it isn't as
Mm,
painful mostly. I mean, my income tax are never enjoyable, so I don't try to fool myself. But once you start, 50% of the time you'll continue. So you keep on starting. That's the
mm,
key.
yeah. No. I well, 50% of the time. Understand that. But like I do agree with the rewards. Giving yourself like small reward every now and then when you get like complete that task. It's because like okay, there are some tasks which if you look at the whole process, for example, writing a book, right? Like okay, most books consist of anything between 10 to like 15 chapters
Yep.
on average. Like if you're going for a really big book, it can be like it can like go up
Right.
to bonkers amount. Uh, It takes a long time before you have a finished product of a book. Uh, it takes a long time. Like there are some things which don't really have a finish end, and it's just continuous. And if you're not giving yourself that sort of small reward here, that sort of boost, that sort of like little carrot to go for,
It,
it
it
makes
makes
things
it
harder.
absolutely. It makes things harder. Absolutely. So yeah, if it's 15 chapters, that's a big book. You take it one chapter at a time,
Mm,
right? One chapter at a
yeah.
time. Take a break, do something nice, and then come back to the second chapter. And then there's another thing you mentioned about perfectionists at the very beginning. Man, that's a tough mindset to have because perfectionists. I mean, I always do my work. I call it, and I put it on the paper, rough draft. And it gives me permission to be
Yes.
sloppy, right? Just get my ideas out on the paper. Then I have to come back and refine them a little bit. But perfectionists will not live with rough drafts. The first sentence has got to be perfect, and the second sentence, it's excruciating for them. I have a couple of my colleagues who are brilliant people. I've written 5 times more books than they have because they're finishing their second one. We're in the same age because they just hit, every line's got to be perfect.
Yeah, no, I often say procrastination
Yeah,
is the killer of dreams because when you get into that sort of realm of it has to be, I have to have the perfect equipment, I have to have this perfect, I have to have the perfect setting, perfect scenario. Like in this world of ours, like I can most already count maybe on one hand, and I can't even recall right now when it's been a perfect moment. Everything's been like the
right.
stars have aligned, the universe went, and yeah, then the hand of like some deity comes down and went, now is the time, act. Never happens, and if it does happen, that is a
Absolutely.
very rare moment. If
So
you're
you
aware
can't
of
wait
it,
for it.
you know.
Somehow you got to get it moving. Somehow you got to do it. Now, well, sometimes
Mm,
as procrastinators, I had the same problem with my work. And once again, if you ask other people for advice, it's always a smart thing because you're not that smart. We're kind of smart, but other people can help us be smarter. And I was, writing my first book, and I'm so, boy, I'm getting a hard time editing this thing. And my friend said, "Why are you
yeah.
editing your work? You don't have to edit your work. You have to write your work. Let somebody else edit it." And I said, "Really? Is that what you've done?" He's written 5 books. I said, "Is that what you've done?" Absolutely. He says, "I'm a terrible editor, and it's excruciating to edit your own work. So you just write your stuff, give it to somebody else. You might have to pay them. You might have to do some barter work. I had to barter some stuff. I painted someone's house years ago so they could edit my book, right? I mean, I knew how to paint. So I painted a house. I got some buddies together, a few beers, and we painted a house. And this guy edited my book, and it was beautiful. So whatever you can do to play to somebody else's strength is really smart. Procrastinators get caught in we have to do everything. The whole thing's got to be things that we do.
Mm. Now, I would also say procrastinators are experts at finding the one sort of
Right.
excuse to put like put the brakes on because you said like just with what you said there, yeah, you had to barter to
Yep.
like paint someone's house. Like look, I know there'll be scores of people out there who would go, okay, I don't have the money for an editor,
Yep.
so what's the point?
Perfect.
And that's and it's like, wait until I get that
Yeah.
money,
Wait till you
and
get the
yeah.
money. I used to bartend. I had money, extra money that would enable me to pay someone to do that kind of stuff. But I bartered some of my services. I've done something. I have a buddy of mine who
Mm.
loves to edit. One of these guys who loves punctuation, but he's not a very good writer. I can give him the gift of here's some things you should be thinking about. I like this. I don't like this too much around content. And then he does my editing. Does that make sense? I mean, so we use our different skill sets to come out with a product.
Well, you're
Absolutely. That's a
complementing
great
each
word.
other.
It's exactly
Uh,
right. Yeah, exactly. If you could use other people to help you, that's just really smart to do. But we get caught sometimes in our silly heads. Oh no, we got to punch it out ourselves, and quitters never quit, and all that kind of silly stuff. It's horrible thinking.
I think it's one of those things where, uh, in the whole sort of game of the whole game of procrastination, because one of the things what happens, well, happens to me when I'm procrastinating, I can get hyper focused on something which will distract me from my task. But it's a case of if I did have a team of people that's all like, oh yeah, pull me out of that sort of like mental like jam, if you get what I mean. And I think many people don't have that with regards to a support mechanism, with regards to
That's
a
a great
team.
point.
You
We
know?
call them accountability partners. These are people that kind of
Mm,
hold you accountable, right? I mean, they're not going to beat you up but they're going to say, "Listen, if I think you're off someplace else, you're giving me permission to say,
yes.
hey, it looks like you're wandering over here. Let's get focused." And then you do the same for me. So we hold each other accountable in a collegial way, but we don't just we're not buddies. You know what I'm saying? Oh well, maybe you'll do it tomorrow. I'd say, hey, this is the third day you haven't tackled this. Let's figure out what's going on, and if I can help you move this thing forward, I'd be able to do that. But it's holding each other accountable. Accountability partners are really helpful, and teammates, if they're a real team, can hold each other accountable that way. Say, Pat, this is the third day you gotten in late. What's going on? Do we need to help you? But you mess up the team when you're in 15, 20, 30 minutes late every day.
Yeah, I think it's different if, like, say you're on a proper sort of team, like, it's definitely in a sporting environment because it's
Yeah,
a different vibe. When it's sort of like, okay, a working office or anything like that, where ultimately they want you to get
yeah,
along in the office, and then you sort of become friends with
yeah,
regard to your colleagues. Like the worst person you can ever turn to sort of like go give you advice about your life from what I like my experience, or to basically hold you accountable to yourself, is like a friend, because they are going to like it. There's a myriad of reasons why they won't do it, but at the heart of it, most times they don't want you to get hurt, or it's like they're like, yeah, I'm going to say
yeah.
the nice thing rather than what's
They
needed
like
or
you.
what's
You know, they care
required.
about you as a person, and but helping you be successful is a part of friendship. So that's where you have to give each other the permission. Because if I'm a softie, I say, "Oh well, if you're tired today, you'll do it tomorrow." Okay, but it's the fourth day in a row where you're tired. If I'm a real friend, I got to say something, as opposed to, "Oh, that's okay. Let's go have a beer together." I mean, so the accountability partner sometimes is a friend, and sometimes is a professional, professional realm, where they can kind of not hold you accountable like a boss, but like, "Hey, what are we doing here? How can I be helpful?"
Mm. So I have to ask, like, with regards to yourself,
Yeah.
with what you just said, like, have you turned to many a sort of professional mentor over the
Oh, yeah,
course
I've
of
had
time?
many mentors in my career because they're a lot smarter than I am, right? So I mean, I'm a mentor to a lot of people now because I'm an old guy and done a few things. But mentors have really helped me create my career because they see things differently. They can help you with different ways of
Yeah.
thinking about something. They can understand the political realm of something where I might be pretty naive. So having mentors and asking for advice, most people, this is what I find. I've interviewed a lot of people, maybe thousands of people for my books. I've been turned down about 3% of the time. And you say, "Hi, my name's Pat, and I'm writing a book on creativity. I hear that you're a very creative person. Could you give me 15 minutes?" Well, most people are going to say,
Mm.
"Well, okay, or, well, talk to my administrative assistant. I'll book you." I mean, if you ask people for help, most of the time they will help you. Now, if it's, "I need 3 days of your life," no, they're not going to do that. But if it's a reasonable request, most people are good people. I mean, that's one of the great findings of my career. And I do a lot of presidents in higher education, and they're really busy, busy, busy people.
Yeah.
And when I've asked for, I need to talk about courageous leadership or something like that, can you give me 15, 20 minutes? Most of the time they find it. That might be 2 months from now, and that's fine, but they find the time. So asking for advice from mentors and peer mentors too, and young people. Young people, they're smart. They're in the world in a different way than I am. I'm not much older than you are, but I've learned how to ask younger people for advice, especially around technology and how to communicate effectively.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's one of those things. You never can, like, never stay in the sort of sliver of time your sort of generation, or my generation, or generations before, or like after both of us. It's like you've got to make sure to be able to be fluid, or be able to like be take different forms, as Bruce Lee would say. You must be like
Yeah.
water. Uh, yeah, but like this is the thing. One of the things I often find observing, as I observe myself and like talking to people, they sometimes don't actually understand the nature of what the task is required, which is the sort of, I would say, the main like pain or procrastination. Might be one of those stealth things,
Yeah, no, no,
if you get what I
exactly. I
mean.
mean, we're not good at asking for. I'm not talking about you and me, right? I mean, but years ago, I wasn't good at asking for questions because if you ask for questions, sometimes people, well, I might not look too smart, and you have you give me a project to do, and I've never done it. If you're a good supervisor, you have to say, "Pat, what questions you have about this?" And then sometimes what people will say, because I admire you and I don't want to look stupid, "Oh, I got no questions, boss." The boss is in trouble because that
Mm,
person doesn't understand the assignment and they're not asking questions. And what we tell leaders, if you ever enter that kind of situation, you say, "Well, let's talk tomorrow morning, and you can think about the task, and we'll go through some questions then." So you give them a little bit of psychological space, and they come back the next morning. About 80% of the time, they'll have some questions, but not in the moment. Does that make sense? And then if they don't
Yeah.
have any questions, the boss is still in trouble because they don't know the assignment and they're not having the courage to ask the question. So the boss has got to say, well, if I was in your place, there's some questions I would ask me. And that gets them off the hook and gets that conversation going. But asking questions and asking for advice is very important.
Mm. I think with, as you say, there is an element of
Yes,
pride to it, but the whole thing is, if you hold on to that sort of gilded pride, it often comes back and bites you in
absolutely.
the backside uh, down the road. And like, trust me, I've beaten that person. It
Yep,
has happened.
absolutely,
You can raise your
absolutely.
hand as well. I would say, yeah, 30 seconds of maybe embarrassment, or if you've like asked the right question, it can turn that person who's had that conversation with to like going, oh, that's a good point. I didn't like that's a major hole I didn't see either. This is what we do
That's
to
exactly
rectify
right.
it.
We all have blind spots. There's certain things we cannot see. It has nothing to do with intelligence at all. It's just we can't see everything. And someone with a different perspective can
Mm,
open up the window. Oh, I never saw it that way. So exactly what your point is. Asking other people for
yeah.
advice or perspective is just a smart thing to do.
Mm. Have to ask. Like, what was in this year, what was the advice you asked for someone which really sort of helped you, say,
Uh,
or change your perspective, or a long held perspective maybe?
that's a great question. I think, oh boy, I think I was working with a client and he had what we call a 360-degree process where you get anonymous feedback from the people that you work with. And that's a very courageous thing to do.
Yes.
And, uh, and his data was not good. You know, he was a kind of a
Oh,
micromanager and a good guy. I mean, people liked him, but he was a micromanager, and micromanagers are hell. Ooh. And I said, well, let's get together next Tuesday and we'll debrief your report. And he said, okay. And then he skipped out on me. And I said, oh, okay. I just let you know, we might have had a miscommunication. Let's do it next Tuesday. And he wrote back, oh, okay, I'll
yeah,
try to fit you in my schedule. Make a long story short, 3 meetings go and get canceled, or he doesn't show up. So I'm sitting there and I'm aggravated, right? Because you don't do that to me. I mean, it's just,
oh,
I've been around a long time. I've done a lot of these things. And a buddy of mine, I said, what do I do here? And he said, Pat, he might not be ready. He said he might not be ready because it sounds like the information has really surprised him. It's not the information is wonderful or he'd like to buy you dinner, but he's digesting the information. And he suggested that why don't you just say, let's get together when you want to talk about this. And what
mm,
happened was he gave me a call and he says, I apologize. I've missed these things here. Let's together on Saturday morning. We'll take a walk and I'll walk you through what I'm experiencing. So somebody else with a different perspective, because I'm getting mad, if I'm being honest, right? People don't do that to me at this stage of my career.
mm,
And he said, he might not be ready. And it just, wow. And I followed through and took his advice. He said, make it an invitation for him to take as opposed to a schedule. And he took it. And, we resolved. I mean, he was a man about it and he owned some of this stuff and he's working hard on being a better manager and not a micromanager. And it was that perspective. He might not be ready. That was that. I don't know if that's what you're asking for. That was about 2 months ago, and I said, "Wow, that was a humbling experience for me." I was drilling down and getting this thing through, and someone said, "You might not be
yeah.
ready."
Mm. No, like this is the thing. It is very hard to look past the end of one's nose, as they say. And like this is the thing. Like with regards to the gentleman who stood you up 3 times, he wasn't like, huh, he knew what was past the end of his nose, and it was a case of like, I'm not. That
Yeah,
truth is a hard truth to like take. And with yourself, like yeah, you like because you were so intensely focused on getting helping him
right.
as quickly as effectively as possible, you just got caught up with that and you couldn't see past
That's
the
right.
end of your nose. The, yeah, that the truth. everyone goes, yeah, if we had the truth, there's great comfort in it. But like people often forget, the truth is sometimes a very
Absolutely.
ugly thing indeed. And like facing it
It's hard.
ain't easy.
It's hard.
Yeah.
And we had a great relation. We had a great conversation that Saturday morning, and we came up with a plan. And it was creating the invitation, putting the yes in his on his desk instead of the on my desk, which was important. You're right. And
Mm,
hearing some tough things about
yeah.
ourselves is a really hard thing. I mean, we're all kind of well intentioned for the most part. Most people are good people, but the way you
Mm.
think you're managing people, and they hate working with you because you're looking at every detail. You're checking everything three times, and that just drives talented people, especially drives them crazy. I mean, that's why I got called in, because they're beginning to lose good people on their team. I'm not putting up with this, Pat. I mean, so I'm not a kid. So that was an interesting. It was a humbling experience for me, but a good experience for me.
Hey. But like this is the thing. At least you like grown from it. You're like going, bam. There's sadly too many people out there which don't grow at all. And basically, the worst thing I think you can say to anybody is like if you've known them since
Mm.
for a good chunk of time and you haven't seen them for ages, and you go, you haven't changed. Like it's just like, oh, I've seen a lot of life and done this, that, the other. Yeah, I haven't changed. So
Yeah,
that's
I
never a
agree.
good
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. You can have a
Ever.
lot of experiences, but you experience the same thing, right? I mean, as opposed to putting yourself out there, taking a little bit of risks, being more open. You want to be better than you were last year, right? I mean, it doesn't be smarter, just more open to people and a kinder person, and maybe a little less procrastination. Procrastinators beat themselves up. They have a lot of stress and anxiety about their habit. And
Why do they
they
beat
say it again.
themselves up?
Well,
Why do
because you're
they beat
supposed to get it
themselves up?
done. In our society, it's like, oh, you got to be a finisher and you got to do it, and then you punch it through, and you're being lazy. Procrastinators are not lazy, and that's a really important point. People, I get interviewed a number of times, and people say, "What's the difference between a lazy person and a procrastinator?" I said, "The very easy difference, and it's a big difference. Lazy people have no stress, anxiety, or guilt. Procrastinators, they have a lot of that. I mean, they know they're procrastinators. They feel bad
Mm.
about themselves. Lazy people. I got a buddy of mine who's a very talented guy, Michael, and if it ain't got done today, maybe it'll get done next week, Pat. I mean, doesn't have an ounce of stress or anxiety in his life. Now, he's a very talented guy and could have been very successful, but he's okay with his status in life. But the difference is lazy people don't really feel the anxiety where procrastinators absolutely do, and they feel the guilt. And they beat themselves up. And the research shows that if you show some compassion for yourself, hey Pat, you goofed off this time. Let's do it another day tomorrow. Self-compassion is a big lever for as far as improving procrastination.
So basically, not self-esteem, but
Yeah,
value in one, like
you're not a bad
value
person
in
for
oneself.
procrastinating. You just didn't do what you wanted to do. So let's figure it out tomorrow and use a strategy to do that. But to beat yourself up, they've done a lot of research in university students. I mean, 90% of the good research in procrastination has been with university students throughout the world. And usually they have a semester, right? In
Yeah,
the beginning of the semester, the professor says, here's 3 reports I want by the end of the semester. And you can almost predict 98% of the students will wait 13, 14 weeks to the last week. And then all of a sudden, oh my God, I have to do the report. And a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, and a lot of crappy quality. And then there's research to show the ones
mm,
that turn it in week 15, if that's your semester, tend to lose a whole grade because they haven't been able to edit it, they haven't looked it through, they haven't refined their thinking. They just kind of got it done and they punched it through. So it really impacts students' academic excellence. And in really high functioning schools like a Cornell, you get a B, I get an A, you're
oh
going to be left behind, right? So you want to make sure you're competing. So starting earlier is really important. And what they found was the professors who reminded them, week 3, how's that report going? Week 6, is that report getting the ones that just reminded them,
yeah.
those students finished and they got better grades.
No, like this is the thing. I sometimes believe the act of doing, if you've got a good guideline to work to, is more important than actually doing the whole perfection. Like waiting for perfection or just sort of aimlessly going. The old like the classic story of like yes, a university class where they had to it sometimes it's taking pictures sometimes it's making parts. Like, yeah, lecturer comes down and goes, yes, you must, like, one half of the class is going to be like judged on one pot,
Hmm.
which has to be done perfectly. The other half is just going to be done on the amount of pots you produce. Have at it, go for it. And the people who had to like try to come up with the one perfect pot never did it, because it's like, right, you talk,
Yep.
you pontificate, you like do like, yeah, you do all these like airy fairy things which lead to no sort of production, no sort of activity, and no sort of combating that sort of realm of procrastination. Whereas the other group, as they've got a guideline where they need to go and what they need to do, they're working at it, and procrastination is never sort of a thing, because they know the more they do, there is a clear
Yep.
winning outcome. Uh, which I think that's what many people struggle with in the world, because there is like, if you go, like, for example, I want
Hmm.
to start a business. You come up with your plan, your business plan, but depending on the nature of the business, there is not sometimes this is the clear win. It's like, this is the stage we've got to, but what is the clear win? And I think it takes a lot of mental fortitude to carry on and keep going
Yeah.
in that sort of
No,
realm.
and if you're doing a startup or you're starting your own business, I mean, the success rate is pretty small. I mean, that's what people. I mean, even when they have venture capitalists giving you $100 million, there's no guarantee you're going to be successful. The thing that I try to
Mm,
share with people, and something kind of changed my mind. Thomas Edison, I mean, he's a pretty
okay.
famous guy in the United States, invents the light bulb, and it's true. It was 10,000 plus attempts at finding the right filament. And his attitude was, "Well,
Yes.
you failed 10,000 times." He said, "No, no. Now I know what doesn't work. I'm going to find out what does work." And that is such a powerful mental model for me, because sometimes people drop the ball 3 times and they're done. I'm not doing it anymore because their ego gets
Mm,
hard, or they feel shamed or stupid. His attitude was of being a learner and being really curious. And I think it's a powerful. I wrote his not his autobiography, his biography, and he's a fascinating guy to have that kind of mental. And he had like over 1,000 patents, so very productive, failing all over the place. Right, as long as you're learning. I mean, the Dalai Lama says, "When you lose, don't lose the lesson." And
mm,
I got that in my office thing. I mean, he's a bright guy, obviously, but that's a book right there. When you lose, we're all going to lose. Don't lose the lesson. What happened? What could I have done differently without beating yourself up? What did I learn from this I can apply for future efforts? I mean, it's really a powerful,
mm.
powerful quote. It's been an important part of my life professionally for years.
Do you believe you can get that, like, well, if someone doesn't have that type of attitude, that sort of like get up, that gusto, do you think it can like
Yeah,
be taught to someone
I
or
think
like trained
so.
into them?
And it all depends on, one of the things that there's a guy named Daniel Kahneman who's very famous here. He's out of Princeton
Mm,
University, and he won the Nobel Prize in economics about 20 years ago. A very bright guy. And these are the two things that he came almost a lifetime of study. It's about attaining goals. We are wacky with goals. I mean, in our country, we do this New Year's Eve, and we're going to lose 20 pounds this month, and we're going to, da, 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 and 92% of people fail by the
yes.
end of the month. And he says there's two things you got to remember. He says, have fewer goals. That's why I mentioned before, I have no more than six, because I used to have 10. I'd get to 7 or 8 and get
Mm,
exhausted and feel like it's a failure, never focusing. I got 6 things done. So now all I do, and it was a buddy of mine who told me that, she said, "Why do you have 10 things on your to do list?" I said, "Don't you? Aren't we supposed to do like 10 things today?" She said, "I only have 5." And she was smarter than me. And I said,
mm.
"You only do 5?" But she said, "I do them well." So does that make sense? I mean, it's making it visible, but it's also having fewer
Yeah.
goals. And then he said, "Give yourself more time." We are very bad at deadlines. So if you give yourself, "I'll do it in a week," so well, maybe you give yourself 2 weeks. You wouldn't give yourself 3 months, but give yourself an extra week and fewer goals, and you'll find you'll be much more successful.
Mm. Yeah, no, but this is the thing. I think people don't actually understand the value of, yeah, if you've done one or two productive things in your day, and you like come back the next day and do one or two productive things in your day, and like you keep repeating that. By the time you get to by the time you get to a month, you're like going, you've done like 30 to 60 productive things, which let's just say, like for most of the population, you are running
Absolutely.
laps around
You
them.
are winning the
In-
Olympics. Exactly. That's exactly it. And it's so sensible. You do two meaningful things. I'm not talking about making two phone calls. Oh, my day is done. But two meaningful things: writing an outline for a chapter, doing a
yes.
meeting with somebody, and having lunch. Two of those a day. Like I said, it's accumulation over time, and over a year, that'd be hundreds and hundreds of successes and victories. So those two things I think are powerful. Have less
Mm,
goals and give yourself more time.
no, no.
Is this being
Very good
helpful?
point. Like, yeah, yeah, no. Like, you know what? Put it this way, I find this is helpful because it's one of those things where, okay, people will say lots of fancy things, and like, yes, they'll write lots of fancy books, and they'll like, yeah, do lots of like fancy videos. But it's one of these things where in any form of sport, craft, or in art, you need to know the
Yeah.
fundamentals behind it all. If you're not aware of the fundamentals, you could be like, I'm the best at this, but yeah, someone who knows the fundamentals will beat you like 6 ways to like Sunday, and beat you every time. Or they will like the fundamentals of they're not there. So like there'll be many of things which will come up in life which will trip you up, and getting back up, which is one of the most important things, is 10 times harder. If with knowing those fundamentals, it's like, yeah, it gets that little bit easier to get up and do it again and again and again, because as you said earlier, we like life is about like it's about success, but more times than not, it's all about overcoming our
Absolutely.
failures, so we
Yep.
can move forward. And most of the people who are celebrated in our world today are the greatest failures of all time. It's just the 80-10-20 principle comes into play. They've like 80% of the stuff they've done has been a failure. They've procrastinated on something too long and everything like this. But that 20%,
That's golden.
it's like,
That's
yeah,
golden. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the careers are not littered with successes all the time. Littered with mistakes and dropping the
mm,
ball and picking it up and learning and keeping on moving. And that's where guts and persistence are really important at times. But exactly, when you we bring sometimes in some of the graduate schools I teach in, we bring in some really high fluting people, and they talk about their career paths,
yes,
and their career paths are not like this. I mean, their career paths, they were bartending, they were doing this, they were an artist, they lost money here, but then all of a sudden something happened and things took off. And I'm trying to say your career path is probably
mm,
going to be a zigzag. So you have to be patient with yourself as you learn, like you said, the craft. How do you get those fundamentals down so that once you have those, you can do many things as opposed to these quick studies and think they can do everything. If the fundamentals are
mm,
missing, you're going to have a hard time being successful over time.
yeah.
Yeah.
I have to ask, with with regards to today's society, with regard like you've spoken to many a person who's been high flying, and you've been saying in like many a talk where they've been talking about that. And like, yeah, from your own life, would you say like resilience has like got it's not as strong as it once was, or like through the whole of society, or is it a case of it's just like one or two people, and like, yeah,
That's
how do you
interesting. I
see it?
think, and I'm a big fan of younger people today, right? I mean, I just am. But I think that some of the more successful people I've seen is that they have the ability to bounce back, right? Like, and sometimes some of the younger people, if they have a couple little failures, they just kind of quit and do something else. So you find themselves going from thing to thing to thing to thing. And I think as you get a little bit older, like in your 30s and 40s, your ability to bounce back is gets stronger, I think. And also we find people who have great resilience have a sense of purpose. They know this is what I'm here to do. This is what I want to learn. This is the
Mhm,
contribution I want to make. And as long as they're still seeing that star and they get beat up in the process, they're still kind of going to that. And if you don't have that kind of purpose,
Yeah.
then you can get bandied around like a ping pong ball.
Mm, mm. No, very
What's your
true.
North Star, right? What's your North Star that you can keep your eye on the prize, even in those difficult days? This is what I'm here to do or here to serve.
Mm. Like it's one of those things where I think it's very hard for some people to find what their North Star is, that sort of true realm of purpose. Like look, for like just talking like our conversation right now, like going from being a teacher to like a principal to being a consultant, and then yeah, stepping out on your own, and like yeah, like to being like an author of,
12,
is it 10
12
books?
books. Yeah.
You're 12.
12 books.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Many a person be like, yeah, I don't have one book in me, but you know what I mean. 12 books. That is a hell of an achievement right there. And like, and forming that, how did you find your North Star? What was that sort of calling? Because it must have been a little bit different from just
Yeah. No, no.
changing jobs.
It's a great question. My mother was a school teacher, and my
Hmm.
father was in the government and very big up there in the government. I mean, very big. And I have one sister, and she's a principal of a school. She became a teacher and a principal. I became a teacher and a principal. So at the heart of it, I'm a teacher, and I think I'm a pretty good teacher because when I was growing up, now we have ADHD and we have dyslexia. I mean, we didn't even have terms for people who were smart but just couldn't learn in the quote the normal way. And I struggled and struggled and
Mm.
struggled in school. They knew I was natively intelligent, but spelling was bad for me. I couldn't do math really well. Still can't do math really well. And it enabled me to figure out, okay, how do I do this so that I don't get F's all the time. I start getting some C's and B's, and learning and struggling with my learning challenges enabled me to teach others. Does that make sense at all? So
Yeah, like basically you get like you've worked out, like if you like compared to the rest of the population, some
yes,
unorthodox ways of getting education and learning into yourself, which you could apply to other people throughout
absolutely. I
society.
still write everything longhand, right? That's a lot
Ah,
of longhand, right? Because when I
yeah.
was, learning how to type and things like that, it doesn't work for me. And I love the cut of a
Mm,
pen on paper, just the visual nature of that. So that's one of the learning techniques that I've used to. I'm a very visual person. You can see all these books behind me and these post-its and things like that. It looks like the Hobbit hole, but I know it's there because everything's got a category in it, and I can see it. So those are the kind of now when I was growing up and I needed those, we didn't have post-its then, right? So we had pieces of paper. My mom and dad wondered what was wrong with this kid. They knew I was smart, which is good, and they weren't critical, which is good. My mom was a teacher, which was good. And I just learned differently. I had a blackboard in my bedroom. I used to have to draw things. So, well, that's what I'm thinking about. And so nowadays we know a lot more. For a lot of years in 70s, 80s, we gave kids lots of Ritalin and lots of drugs to stop these hyper kids or these kids who weren't learning. And now we know that wasn't a very good thing. So, really investing in professional development for teachers to meet the child where they are, the student where they are, is so important. And then using a variety of different things to engage a kid or an adult for that matter. I teach adults mostly, right? And if I just talk to them for 15
mm,
minutes, most people fall asleep. But if I here's like you do, you got me engaged because you're asking great questions. So I'm here, baby, I'm here. And it's like, how do you do that with adults? I think is one of the challenges.
mm. Like yeah, I can imagine, like, because this is the thing. It's when it comes to teaching, when it comes to sort of education, like I don't care what anyone says. Everyone like has sometimes a little
Yep,
Achilles heel with it because of the whole sort of fact of like I don't want to be embarrassed, or I don't want to
yep,
look stupid. This can manifest in positive ways and it can manifest in negative ways. And yeah, trying to sort of like work that out as an adult is a very sort of tough, I would say, a tough thing to do, because it's like, yeah, you've got to be able to have that ability to
absolutely.
humble yourself and go, yeah, I
I
need
need help.
help. with
exactly.
this particular film.
I
Yeah.
need help. I mean, you're not. I don't know if you're a lawyer, but I have a lawyer. Right? I mean, I don't know anything about the law. If I get in trouble, I'm going to go start learning about the law. It'll take me 10 years. So get help from other people. My
Yes.
accountant, who I pay a lot of money to, yeah, but he helps me be successful. So what do we do so we can focus on what our skill set is and use other people, whether it be bartering or paying or whatever it is, to do the things that we can't do very well and not beating ourselves up. And my dad was a high level accountant in the government, and I couldn't do math.
Yeah.
Right, and he thought, what is wrong with this boy? What's wrong with this boy? He knew I was smart, but I couldn't figure it out. So does that make sense?
Yeah. No, no, no. Yeah, it does. It does. No, it's yeah, yeah. Like I can just see your dad like looking at your mom like
Yeah,
well, it's
yeah.
not
Oh,
me.
absolutely,
It's like, I
absolutely.
go,
I'll
mm.
tell you a personal story. I told you I was from Dublin, Ireland, right? My parents are in the United States.
Yes.
I was an adopted kid from Dublin, Ireland, and my sister was
Ah,
adopted also. So I mean, talk about parents looking at the other one. I mean, that's your side of the family. They could both say, "Well,
yeah,
he's not really."
yeah.
I never heard that, but that
It's
might have been
like,
a secret conversation that they had. That thank God he's not really ours, and he is ours. We love him and all that kind of stuff. But but it was very frustrating. And when people, with your parents, whatever, people you admire are critical of you, it's not a very positive experience. And that's why school is an awful experience for a lot of kids. A lot of kids find it. They
mm,
don't, the social pressure, the academic pressure. I mean, I dealt with a lot of young men that they were really smart kids, but they couldn't spell their name correctly. Well, and you can get, people can bust on you all day long with that, right? So you begin to hide and
mm,
not participate and back off or become very angry. I mean, some bad things can happen there.
mm. Yeah, just trying to
Trying
find your way, and like
trying to find
that
your
is the
way.
difficult.
And teachers
But
help a lot. I mean,
yeah,
if they're good, they can help young men and women find their way.
yeah, no, and that's one of the things I think is harder today than ever before because there is just so
Oh yeah.
much distraction around trying like which we've been talking about procrastination, like just basically putting something off. Yeah, pick up your phone, like go on the internet, do this. That you can list off 1,000 things you could do before you want to do like even if you're really are a focused individual that you could do before you need to do the
Oh,
task at hand.
absolutely.
You know?
These are wonderful things. These things. They were when I was growing up. We didn't have
Oh
anything like
yes.
this, to say the least. They're distraction machines. And one of the things we do with some graduate students is we say, put your iPhone, smartphone, whatever you want to call that, in another room for an hour because the distraction's right at your
Mm,
fingertips and you're doing a task you don't like. Well, guess what? I'm going to check in my email. Someone might be asking what Pat's thinking about, right? It's such a seductive and addictive thing. And the ones that can minimize their distraction. A lot of times you're in a room and people are talking. I can't concentrate. Some people go to Starbucks and that's where they learn because they like to have the noise and the hissing and that kind of stuff there. That's not me.
yeah.
You got to figure out what your learning place is. And I need quiet. And so if you go someplace in an office and if people can knock on your door and say, "Hey, Pat, how's it going?" I won't get anything done. I used to have to hide someplace in a small room and get my work done and then come back and make sure I was doing my job. But you got to figure out what your learning style is and then support that. But distractions are bad for procrastinators.
Mm, yeah, no, because like this is the thing. Like you know how they say the saying of death
Yep.
by 1,000 cuts. Like yeah, basically a mobile phone. Uh, it's 1,000 cuts on the most valuable asset we have and never can get back. And people are like, "Oh, what's
Right.
that? It's time." You know, like you can lose money, you can make money back. You can like yeah, you can get unhealthy and you can get healthier again. But once your time's gone, your time's gone. Like if there was a machine to give people back their time, oh my god, I don't know. Like if I was the inventor of that machine,
You'd be very rich.
whew, I would like and then some,
There's an old saying
and
that we
then some.
think we have a lot of time and then we don't. I mean, and a lot of times
Yes.
towards the end of the people's careers or lives, they have lots of regrets because, well, I can do it tomorrow. And there's always next week. And And so time can disappear. Like you said, it's the most precious resource. And I don't think we treat it that way. Not everyone, I mean, but a
Mm.
lot of folks, that's a big regret that they have. And when you're young, the world's ahead of you, right? The sunshine's always in your face and everything's going to be fine. But that can, the days are long and the years are short. I mean, when I look back, at Cornell when I was there in '89, that feels like yesterday. I can remember it was fall and the beautiful campus and have a hard time remembering what I did 2 weeks ago. But it's time's a very precious resource, and we have to treat it right. Can I tell you a technique that people have found helpful with tough tasks? I don't want to
Yeah,
step on your time too
please.
much. It's something called temptation bundling.
Oh no.
And what that says is if you have a tough task or a noxious task, if you pair it up with something
Yes.
nice. So I don't want to
Uh-huh.
run, but I'll run with my friend. I don't want to do the laundry,
Yes.
but I'll watch TV while I do the laundry. I don't want to clean out the garage, but I'll listen to the sports station while I'm doing that. And how I use it in my income tax, remember I said I always procrastinate with it, is that I love sports, mostly American football. I'm a big fan of American football. And I'll watch the game
Ah,
and I'll start doing my organizing my income taxes. And then, but I can see the game. I can do a little bit of work. I can see the game. It takes me a long time to finish, but I finish. Right? I mean, not I have to do it
yes.
in 3 days because I'm all over the country and I have different receipts. I have to be. I mean, it's a complicated little consulting business, and it takes me 3 times as long, but I get done. And I think it's just a powerful note. How can I pair it up like a walk with a friend if I don't feel like walking, or make it a social activity? You know what I mean? And get people together. I'll do a real quick story. A buddy of mine about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, had a two-car garage and was full of just crap, just stuff. Because he's a kind of a collector. He's not a nut, but he just loves stuff and antiques. And his wife was saying, I opened up the garage and I can't even park the car in, and the kids can't even put their bikes in. John, you got to do something. So he gives me a call and says, Pat, every time I open that thing, I just get overwhelmed because he sees that all that mess.
Mm.
He says, help me. I said, okay, I'll give you a suggestion. I said, anything. I said, listen, is there anyone else in your neighborhood that has a garage like yours? And he says, yeah, there's a guy about 3 doors down. He's got a 3-car garage full of crap. I said, this is what I ask you to do. Get a 6-pack of beer, knock on his door next Saturday and say, Bob, just want to say hi. And I wanted to buy you a beer. And by the way, I'll give you an hour of my time to help you start cleaning up your garage. Are you interested? Well, who's going to say no to that
Mm.
offer? And what they did over a 3-month period of time is they rotated Saturdays. And they became pretty close friends. They're helping each other out, they're having a couple of beers, shooting the stuff. And at the end, each garage could get one car parked. That's a victory. Remember, they couldn't get into the garage. So they weren't looking for perfection. They were looking to change it. So the 3-car garage, his wife could park. In the 2-car garage, his wife and his kids could put their bikes in there. But they asked for help. So you have to be a little creative sometimes in how you approach things and not feel like you have to do it all yourself. So they kind of did temptation bundling in a very different way.
Mm. Temptation bundling and helping building
Yep,
a new habit
in a
in a
positive way.
positive way. Oh, liking that, liking that. I think I might have to use a little bit of temptation
Why not?
bundling myself. But yes, I'm a little bit of a sadist. So, like, yes, when I go out on an early
Yeah,
morning run, it's like, come on, let's go. But yeah,
I walk
awesome.
every day 10,000 steps every day. I mean, I'm really proud of that.
Yes.
And two things I do: I make it a ritual because right now this time of the season we have a pretty day here, but sometimes you wake up it's 25 degrees and it's cold. And
And the
if I
rest. Come on now.
got up in the morning and said, okay, now where's my hat? Where's my scarf? Where are those gloves I'm looking for? And do I put a sweatshirt on? I'll get exhausted and say, oh, let me go get a cup of coffee. So what I do the night before is I set up all my stuff. You read the weather report, right? It's going to rain. I got a raincoat. I got an umbrella. I got special things. And so when I get up in the morning and do my things, I get to my station within a minute. Boom, I'm dressed and I'm out the door. I don't have to think about it. It's a routine that is almost mindless. And that routine has enabled me to do the
Mm.
10,000 steps. But I also do it with a buddy of mine. I have two walking buddies. And we rotate days. And we just, talk. We solve all the world's problems by walking around, and we all get 10,000 steps. And I've missed it one day in about 3 years because
Wow,
you just get into a pattern
liking that.
and you do it with a friend. You make it a social activity. It's a little bit easier.
Perfect. Loving that. Now, have to ask. Now, how long did it take you to produce your
It
books then?
takes about it usually take a long time. I mean, but I can write a pretty good book in about 6 months if I've done the research. The procrastination book, and just so you know, the title's kind of fun. How to be a better procrastinator, right? How to be a it's on Amazon, so I'm selling it there. But that didn't take me too much time because over the years, because I have a procrastination habit, and the first line of the book is I'm a productive procrastinator. I wanted to let procrastinators know you can still be productive, though you're a procrastinator, if you use certain strategies. And I had 3 boxes of books, and COVID hit, and all of a sudden I'm not flying all over the country. I couldn't. I was doing Zoom meetings, but I had a chunk of time I never had before. And I said, I've been fighting this thing for my since I've been a kid. Why don't I put something together and see if I can put together a book? And it took me about 6 months, soup to nuts, to get it edited and all that kind of stuff there. And so I can do a book in about 6 months. A more academic book, it takes a good year.
That's still like wow, no, that's still very impressive. Just to like look, just to say, yeah, one book, that's cool. Two books, that's like what I mean, getting up there. Three books, that's rare air. And like to like keep on going to go, yeah, I have 12 books produced and like doing it in a sort of like 6 months to a year period. That is like one hell of a bit of focus right there. Plus, with the nature of your
Yep.
work traveling around, like how do you fit the time in the day to get it done? Because you travel like well, when COVID was there, no traveling, but
Yep.
now
Yeah.
when you're traveling about,
An old colleague of mine said, make waiting your friend if you're a consultant. Because you can be waiting in the airports, people are going to cancel on you. And if then what do? You don't do nothing. Always have a book with you, always have some articles with you, and I always have a writing pad with me and the pens. And so if I get stranded, let's say, for 3 or 4 hours at the airport, I might get something to eat, but then I can sit. I got work to do all the time, and I'm not a workaholic. I mean, I goof off. I tend to goof off on Fridays. Monday through Thursday, I try to get about 5 to 6 hours in 30-minute chunks, and I take 10-minute breaks. Saturday, I do real research. I just read. Sunday, I just goof off and go out to dinner and have friends and have a few beers and watch football. So I'm pretty regimented. When I'm traveling, it's much harder. And when I'm traveling, I can usually get when I walk, I get about 5 to 7,000 steps. I just can't. The time isn't there because the clients are asking me some different things and things like that. But I always make sure I have a
mm,
project waiting. So in the airplane, I mean, I was in San Francisco 3 weeks ago. That's a 6-hour flight. Well, I read half a book. I mean, I feel, oh, okay. Instead of napping, why would I can nap when I'm dead? Right? I mean, I read half the book and I came off the thing around 12 o'clock in the afternoon. I already accomplished something. I felt great. I felt really good.
oh, fantastic, loving it, loving it. So I have to ask, like, yeah, over the course of the next, say, 12 to 18 months, what goals or like targets do you have for yourself? What would you like to achieve,
That's a
sir?
great question. Three things. I have 3 or 4 books in my mind. I have a little chart of the 3 or 4 books I want to write within the next year, right? And 18 months is probably
Mm,
more realistic. So if I get 3 to 4 in 18 months, that'll be pretty good. I want to take more vacations. I travel a lot. I've probably been to almost every state. I've been to London. I've been to France, and I love to travel, but usually it's on business. So you might get a day off, but you got to be on business. And so I want to take more time off. I want to make sure I go. So I'm planning to go to Iceland in January, and I've
ah,
been talking about it for many
oh,
years. And I have an accountability partner, a guy named Tom. He says you've been talking about that for a long time. So in January, I'm going to go to Iceland. So I'm going to try to build a lot more fun into my life. And I want to learn something new. I don't know what it is yet, but you do a lot of reading and know a lot of stuff. But I want to go into learn something that is so unfamiliar to me that'll really stretch my thinking. So I don't know what that is yet, but those would be the kind of the three big goals.
perfect, perfect. Got to say, yeah, thank you very much for sharing. Got to say, get out to like Iceland. You might not want to go out there just yet. There's
Yeah,
the
yeah, I was reading
volcano, I
about
think,
that.
is
That must,
happening.
yeah, the volcano and something else happened too. There was two things of natural disasters. I don't know how big they were, but they were moving people out of one of the towns.
Yeah, basically, I think 3 months ago, one of their volcanoes was erupting. It all calmed down, but it's happening underground. So they've had a couple
Oh
of
wow, okay,
earthquakes there, and they've had to evacuate this town. I'm like going, okay. I'm throwing my mind back to around about 2007 when they. Don't even ask me to
oh
pronounce the
that's
name of
right,
that
yeah, yeah,
volcano, which just
blew
yeah,
up,
just
yeah.
grounded everything.
You couldn't
Yeah,
fly, you couldn't get to Europe,
it's
you
like
couldn't get to Europe for like 2 weeks.
no, yeah. It like I was working for a satellite communications company at the time, and I just flew back from Germany into the UK just
Yeah,
as they stopped all the flights. I was like, okay, so right, just
you
got
were
in by the
lucky.
skin of my teeth, and yeah, I came out into the airport. It was madness, but that is another story, another story indeed. But yeah, Pat, I have to say, oh, thank you
This
for
was
coming on
insightful.
today. Oh, I've enjoyed this conversation. Yeah, look forward to doing this again. Can you tell the people out there how they can find you
Yeah,
out on the
my last
internet?
name is Sanahan, Sanaghan. In the Sanahan group, there's a big web page that shows all my books and things like that. And in Amazon, I got about 12 books out there. You go to Amazon Books, Patrick Shanahan, and you can see the book. I have one out just came out about 2 weeks ago on creativity. How can you be more creative in your life? Because a lot of us think it's all dancers and poets and musicians are creative. We're all creative, and how do you build that creative muscle so that you can, deal with issues in life and solve problems and solve challenges? So it's a book on creativity. But SanahanGroup.com or Patrick Sanahan at Amazon. And I've enjoyed this. We didn't no, I didn't know what questions you were going to ask. It really kept me on my toes and really interesting. And you asked some great questions. I appreciate it very much.
I appreciate your time today. I appreciate like the knowledge you've shared with myself and yeah, the people out there. I love what you're doing, and yeah, please keep
Absolutely.
it
Well,
up,
I
sir.
enjoyed this
Keep it
very
up.
much. Thanks for making my Friday really good.
Oh, there you go. I've made one person's Friday
Absolutely.
really good, Pat here. Yes. And I hope I've helped make your Friday very good as well, my friends, my life warriors. Please stay well, stay safe, be awesome, be excellent, be fantastic, be all the positive bees you can be in this world, and then some. Have a great day, guys. Have a
Take
great
care.
day.
Bye bye.
Peace. Yes. And we are